refactor some stuff. So what can I create? Oh man, it's a good question. I'm so glad you guys asked this question because if you hadn't asked this question, we'd never get past this part. Okay, what can I create inside of CLR? It's a wonderful question. On the board here has the answer. Okay. Anyone ever done a store procedure? NTC. Okay. All right. Almost everybody. If you're not using store procedures and you're doing code, come on now. Come on. I mean, I do understand there's sometimes that little division between departments and you can't get the DBAs to do it within a week's time. You know what I mean? You want to just write your ad hoc queries. Solve it and write your store procedures. They're awesome. Okay? But look, we can do store procedures over here in CLR. We can do aggregates. How many aggregates are in SQL Server? There's like 10, 12, 11, maybe something like that. That's horrible, isn't it? You would think out of all the years we've been doing data in SQL Server, we would add some new aggregates in there, wouldn't you? Okay, count, sum. Do you guys know what aggregates are? Okay, all right. I had that like after lunch stare coming back at me, like, what's an aggregate? All right, so aggregates, triggers. Okay, we can do triggers. How many of you have to do triggers? Probably a lot of you. User-defined types. Okay, there are data types there. Okay, and you might have heard the name user-defined data types inside of SQL Server, but all that is an alias, right? Anyone ever created a user-defined data type inside of SQL Server where you said you wanted to call this data type email instead of calling it a bar chart 50? You know, and so those should really be called aliases. That's what they should be called. They're not really user-defined data types because you didn't really create anything. You just reused something and renamed it. Okay, here we're going to give you the power to create your own data type. Ooh. Show me now. Wait. Okay, and then user-defined functions. 5 things. User-defined functions, store procedures, aggregates, and those other 2 things are there. Okay, triggers and user-defined data types. All right, that's what we're going to do. So, hey, if you look at the right-hand side there, that looks like Visual Studio, doesn't it? You know, project, build, debug. Seen that before? Okay, so these things are in Visual Studio, not inside the SQL Server Management Studio. Oh, it's great. So a user-defined function might look something like this. Just look really quickly because we're going to do some more code and stuff like that later. But notice at the top there, or just notice what language is this in? C#. Who said this is in C#. Yeah, you need to move to the front row so you can see. This is C#. So I'm allowed to stay in my beautiful environment of C# so I can continue to write the curly braces, and boom, I'm good. But look at that top line. That top line is just an attribute, right? Okay, don't worry about it. We'll go over some code. We'll go over live code in just a second. But that top line is just an attribute. Okay? It's just metadata, information about what this method is supposed to do, right? Okay, cool stuff. Somebody designed it for me. All I have to do is follow directions. Okay, store procedures. Excellent, we can do it. Fantastic stuff. You know, we got triggers. Excellent, we can do it. You know, that code probably wouldn't work. And then our aggregates. Okay, so we have those as well. We can create our own little aggregates. That's going to be some cool stuff, and I'll show you one. And then user-defined data types. I'll show you one of those as well. Okay, so we'll get into some code in just a few minutes. Okay, but why would I want to do this still hasn't been answered. I mean, I can create store procedures in T-SQL. I can create triggers in T-SQL. I can create most of these things in T-SQL. Why do you want to do it inside of here? All right, let's go through a little scenario. Okay. How many of you? First of all, how many of you are familiar with the PUBS database? All right, awesome. Okay, I'll use the PUBS database here. How many of you could write a query that said select star from authors? Show of hands. All right, good. How many of you could do that same query, and when you got it back, for every author you got back, go to another table and get maybe what their books were? Bang your hands together. All right, 1. Excellent.
Like going back, or are you talking about an iterator?
However you want to do it, doesn't matter. Okay, but you could get it done. That's all we're saying. Okay, so we're still inside of T-SQL then. Are you with me? Okay. Now, how many of you can do that same query? Go get the authors for each book they get, bring it back. Then for every book that they have, you want to look at one certain column, and based upon that column, you're going to go out to an Oracle database and grab another 2 rows from over there. And when you get those 2 rows back, you're going to look at column number 5, and then you're going to take that and make a spreadsheet out of that over here in Excel. And then from Excel, every entry you have to enter there, we have to go out to a DB2 database and then withdraw something from there. We have to go and make notes that we did this, make a log over there. And then from that, you want to go back out to Oracle again insert 2 rows into a separate database that's sitting on the same Oracle server, and then create one of those beautiful parameter array things that they have, and then bring that back over to SQL Server, parse through it, and then figure out if there's a value that's greater than such and such and such and such, and then take that and then put it back into the original column. How many of you can do that in T-SQL? Okay, but now, and it's not even SSIS. I bet you would have a hard time doing what I said inside of SSIS as well. Most of it can get done, but some of it you're going to have problems with. You with me? But what if I said, could you do that inside of C#? Most of your minds right now look at it and say, you know what, that's just some ADO.NET. That's just some interacting with the Office there to create a little Excel document or a comma separated. You could do that. You could figure out very easily how to do that. And then, how many of you could get that to run? Okay, if you were able to do it, say, SSIS, how many of you could get that to run so that a user could call it inside of their data? See what I mean? There's a difference. SSIS, even if I could handle all that in SSIS, it becomes some job that I run every once in a while. You with me? But if I wanted to run every time someone says, clicks a button on their screen, because they're trying to get a result back, that's a different story. Are you with me? Okay? So I'm telling you that if it's good, if you can do it in T-SQL, write it in T-SQL. Don't make your life hard. Okay? But when it becomes outside the range of what SQL Server was designed to do, you can redesign SQL Server. Because you can write CLR code. How can I do this? When they design SQL Server, they put a CLR in. I mean, it has its own little CLR. It's got they call it the SQL CLR, but for all intents and purposes, it's the common language runtime. And if it's there, then I can run my code. Yes, sir?
What's the benefit of using the CLR in SQL Server rather than just using it on a normal server?
All right, good question. Okay. Good question. Let's see if we can answer that by the time we get out of here.
Okay.
Cool? All right, excellent question. All right, so when to use it, if it's good, T-SQL has limited capabilities. It's not really, it doesn't have a lot of procedural logic. It has some things you can do. You can't really do a for each loop and things like that through SQL Server. But what if I wanted to be able to do those inside of my SQL Server? Then I could use CLR. Okay, if I had CPU-intensive code, so a lot of the things you write cursors for and such might be very CPU-intensive. If you're trying to do a lot of calculations with T-SQL, that's probably not good, but you could do those easier inside of the CLR. If you have cursors, you can refactor them into CLR code. If you have some store procedures that are really complicated, but you can see them in easier way, you might be able to get a better performance out of those. So there are some things you could write in SQL Server, but you might want to rewrite inside of CLR, and you might get a better performance. Not really sure. Okay, but extended store procedures, remember those? Okay, those things go outside the system, outside of SQL Server, do something like the command line, command exec, and all those things. You have a question?
Yeah, again, because our DBA shut this off and won't let us use it. Because they're arguing here, great, you do all this great stuff. It's great, but you're going to kill. I mean, you write store procedures you give us that have rotten performance. This now is just going to give you even more opportunity to create something that's going to take my server down to its knees.
Well, let's try to go there too, okay? Because I think we'll be able to wrap that up at the end by how the DBA can go in and say, let me mark this a certain way so that it can't do certain things.
Is there an execution plan that's available? The stuff you do with the CLR?
It's still going to be, yes, you can monitor what happens in the CLR, okay? But those will be monitoring the same way you'd monitor your, say, your .NET code. Are you with me? Okay, so Profiler has one thing in there about CLR, and what that is when was the CLR, when was the an assembly like activated? Okay, that's all. But the rest of it we .NET monitoring. But hold that thought. Okay, hold that thought. Okay, I can probably get a better memory management out of the CLR code than what SQL Server has in it. Maybe. Okay, those are some things that are actually maybe. Okay, when you need to loop through items, maybe that's a good thing for it. When you need to do conditional statements, okay, that's all good too. But when do I jump into the CLR thing? If Jarrod can convince me by the end of the day that I should go the way of CLR, okay, then when should I jump in? Okay, that's a good question.